legacy builders, welcome to lesson 4 of the trademark chapter of the IP for Business Blueprint course. I'm Jenn McNeely with JWM Designs and Marketing, and in this video lesson, I'm going to talk about the ways you can protect your trademark or service mark from infringers, regardless of whether your mark is registered or unregistered. This is the last video lesson of the trademark chapter of my intellectual property course. I am so glad that you've stuck to it and you're doing all your action steps for each lesson. If you haven't already watched the prior video lessons in this chapter, where I discuss the differences between trademarks, service marks, how to create or select a protectable mark for your business, and how to register your business with the USPTO, I strongly suggest that you take a look at them. Why now? Whether or not your mark is registered or not, you have the right to protect your brand from infringers who want to capitalize on your popularity or who just want to do harm to your brand for other reasons. Understanding your options when it comes to protecting your ownership rights is a crucial component to protecting your brand. So let's go ahead and get into it. As I've mentioned in prior videos, your exclusive right to use a mark is not dependent on whether you register your mark with your state or the USPTO. By default, you can have what's called a common law right to your mark based solely on the fact that you use your mark in commerce. However, it is your responsibility as the owner of the mark to enforce your rights or file legal action against potential infringers. No matter the registration status of your mark, there are several things you need to do to protect your mark from unauthorized use by infringers. Adopt your mark. The first step to protecting your mark is putting the public on notice that you've adopted the mark in connection with the products and services you provide. That means that if you have registered your mark with the USPTO, you need to use the circle with the R symbol every time the mark is used. If your mark is not registered, then you need to use the TM or SM in conjunction with your mark. You can easily put those things anywhere, save a file or a PNG with your mark, including that TM or SM. The second thing you need to do is monitor other marks. The most basic thing you can do as an owner of a mark is monitor your state and the USPTO trademark registration application filings and oppose the marks that are similar to yours. Even if your mark is unregistered, you can still oppose the registration of a mark if you can show that you own a mark and that you've been using that mark prior to that applicant. You should also monitor the competitors in your industry to make sure that your mark and their marks are distinguishable. The third thing you can do is enforce your mark. If you find that someone is using your mark, you need to immediately take action to assert your right as the owner and protect your brand. One of the simplest ways to do this is to send a cease and desist letter to a potential infringer to put them on notice that they're using your mark and you demand them to stop using it. Now, there is no guarantee that the person will stop using it simply by the fact that you sent them the letter. Some people may respond to the letter by stating that they are not infringing, while others may respond by asking for proof that you own the mark. Another possibility is that the potential infringer may want to negotiate a licensing agreement with you so that they have permission to use the mark. Just know that a cease and desist letter is not the same thing as getting a court order or a judgment. And depending on the response you receive, if any, from the infringer, may determine what your next steps are going to be. For some people, the letter may be enough to get them to stop using your mark. For others, you may need to be prepared to seek legal action to get an injunction to stop the infringer from using your mark and a court order for them to pay damages and fees. The fourth thing you can do is maintain your mark. You maintain your mark by keeping your registration with your state or the USPTO up to date with all filings and fees paid. If your mark is federally registered, your registration will not expire so long as you file your renewal documents and pay the associated fees. The first renewal period happens between the 5th and 6th year after you've gotten your registration, and the following renewal will take place around 9 to 10 years after your initial registration date. After that, you will need to file a renewal every 10 years to continue to protect your trademark. If your mark is unregistered, you maintain your mark by consistently using it in commerce. It's one of those things where it's all about you snooze, you lose. Now, this does not mean that if you don't add the TM or the SM every single time your mark is used, you're no longer protected. It just means that on average, you need to consistently show the public that you have adopted your mark as part of your brand. Here's a bonus tip. Never use your mark as a standalone noun to avoid diluting your mark. Instead, always use a generic term for your product or service after using your mark. Here's an example. With Apple, it's always Apple Computers, or Samsung, Samsung Televisions. Don't let your mark become a generic term for your products or services, because then it loses its protectability. And the second thing, never use your mark as a verb. For example, you don't Google a business, you use Google's search engine to find a business. See what I mean? I know it seems like a lot to protect your brand, but it's so important, guys. Whether you've registered your mark or not, following these simple steps to protect your mark can not only keep potential infringers from misusing or diminishing the value of your brand, but it can also be used to protect you should someone claim that you are the infringer. I hope that you understand the value of owning and protecting your mark, whether your mark is registered or not. Remember, no one will enforce your ownership rights on your behalf. It is your responsibility, and failure to protect your mark can result in your inability to exclusively use it. Remember, your mark is your brand. Examples that come to mind are aspirin, trampoline, dry ice, escalators, laundromat. All of those words were once protected trademarks, and they have all lost their legal protection because they've just become generic terms. Let's recap. In this video, I talked about the ways that you can protect your mark regardless of its registration status. I also gave you a few examples of ways to avoid diluting the value of your mark by not using it as a standalone noun or a verb. I also gave you examples of trademarks that were once legally protected but lost their protections and became common terms for their products and services. Your action steps and homework for this lesson is to set up a process in your business to monitor new registration filings with your state and the USPTO. I would suggest subscribing to the Trademark Gazette, which is published every Tuesday for marks, as well as a list of canceled and renewed registrations. Also, set up a few Google alerts for your competitors to monitor what they are doing. If you suspect someone is using your mark, you may want to contact an intellectual property attorney in your area to discuss your options. I've also included sample template cease and desist letters to help you get started should you decide to take action yourself. Now remember, this is not me giving you legal advice. This is just me giving you some legal information, and you can decide what to do with it. I always encourage everyone, seek legal advice from a licensed attorney in your state if you have questions specific to your particular circumstances. I hope you guys have found this fourth lesson to be helpful. We are now moving on to copyrights, and I am super pumped to share more with you guys. Please post your questions or comments in the video comments area below. You can also post questions and comments in the private Facebook group for this course. Remember, you also can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and my handles for those sites are all listed in your course resource area as well as your ebook. That's it for this lesson, so until I see you in the next lesson, keep building.